Hey,
Everyone.
Hey, good morning.
good morning.
We might talk about this later. Tammy, I know you keep putting a note about doing the current and pending for
Yeah.
the project report.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but I cannot figure out where to get the template and where it is supposed to be uploaded. Like
Yes,
I've done this before, but now I cannot find it.
this is why I said to start early.
Yes, 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 yes. I know. I'm
Because
aware.
I
I looked for
always
it last week
do.
and I gave up.
No, so first of all, NSF changes this stupid thing about every 6 months. I hope they will stop changing it, but they haven't stopped changing it. So, um, I just Google it, but they've gone to this new Science CV thing where you have to do it online. And it's a pain in the butt. And then you download it. And then every time you download it, you have to certify it. And here, I'll put this is where I link to it.
Thank you. Okay.
But then it's not even there. And then it's like how to format. And then it says NSF has partnered with the National Institutes of Health.
Oh, yeah. This is starting to look
And then you
more
have to go to that
familiar.
link. It's really unobvious. And then you have to download it. And then you don't, there's no place to upload it until you say, has your support changed in the blah blah blah, the research
Like in
or
the
the
report
fast lane.
itself.
Yeah, in the annual report itself,
Uh-huh.
then it says, has your support changed since the last time, which for most people it does, unless if you have any research going on, it probably has changed in some way. And then when you say yes, then it asks for your current and pending.
What do you know which tab that's on?
Yeah, it's on the personnel. And I'm letting this take everybody's time because Narsima and Chris are going to hit it too. Chris, if you don't have other support, then you can just say no, and then your life is happy. But I bet Narsima has had like anytime you get a new project or close a project, then your support is technically changed.
I don't have a personnel tab. I have a
What?
participants organizations tab,
That might be it then.
but it
And
doesn't
then it
ask me
says
any questions about my
not
support.
yet. Not yet. So go to your here. Do you just want to share your
Can I like
screen?
do a share screen? Maybe this is
Yeah, go
educational for
ahead.
everybody. I'm sorry.
Yes, yes, you can be be the suffering guinea pig. People will
Can
appreciate
you
you.
turn on the sharing?
I should have it. Oh. No, I didn't.
That's
I
okay.
meant to make you share and then I shared mine. Okay, mistake.
Wait, are you seeing my
Yep.
NSF
Okay, so
page
go to edit details.
in here?
Yep.
Error 404.
Uh, well, I
Sorry.
can't help you there.
Okay, we're gonna try again. Um, okay, create edit report. Let's see if
Yeah.
this tab works.
Yeah.
I'll just go to create edit report. They seem
Uh-huh.
to be in. Okay, the burden statement. Participants, edit details. Oh, it's this one. Has there been a change in
Yeah. So if
active
you
other
say yes,
support?
then it will ask you to upload a new current and pending.
Can I just say no? Sorry. Okay. I know. Thank
No,
you
it's
so much
fine.
for pointing that out. I appreciate it. Okay.
It is super not obvious both on the generating that form end and on the uploading it at end. And then you can't like it makes it so you can't submit the whole progress report, which is like the stupidest thing ever.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Now I know where it is.
Yeah. Okay, so Ellison is here. Ryan's not here. Um, I would like to do that third question with Ellison and Ryan in the room. If Ryan doesn't turn up, then we will just do it anyway. But I really think this is important. Sorry, I'm moving. I'm at home and the washing machine is loud, so I'm moving my position. Um, uh, and I know Ellison has to leave, so I kind of want to get to those things. So quick reminder about the schedule. I put it in the email. I'm not here for a while, is the bottom line. So just wanted to see if anyone had any questions like, oh my God, what are we going to do without you? Haha. I'm sure, I'm sure you don't have a problem with that. Um, Anyway, anyone if anyone has proposals for the use of that time, you can also make them to the group via the respect mailing list. That also means that the modeling meetings won't happen unless Narasema wants to use that time for modeling. Okay, and I know Kartik is out today.
Use which specific time, Tammy?
The modeling meetings, I got in
Oh yeah.
charge of them, the
Yeah,
Wednesday
yeah,
ones.
yeah.
So they're
Yeah.
just not gonna happen, just
No,
so everyone
unless
knows.
no, yeah, they're not. We're
Um,
working bilaterally on the papers, with Christina separately and Shangwe separately. So it's
yeah.
really, I just thought of if Raidul wants to discuss ABM related stuff and just proactively reach out and happy to get together or organize us to meet.
So next week, Wednesday, I will be here. So we can have that modeling meeting. We're super struggling with the choice function. We keep trying different things. So it might be nice if y'all want to talk that out next Wednesday. Anyway, I put schedule in the subject line so that you could, if you forgot what was happening, you could go back and search for it. And then second thing, any quick questions, or you can have long questions about the annual report.
Yeah, one of my quick questions, I think, and part of this is because I maybe joined in halfway through the conversation, but um, where do I so I have nothing to report in that um, current and pending, but where
Yeah.
do I do that? I'm on the website, but
So if you say, if it's, excuse me, there's a question that says, has your support changed?
okay.
And if you say no, you do not have to upload anything.
Okay.
And if you're
And
only on this project, then you can say no.
okay. And then I can't quite remember from last year when I load the document, am I loading everything that everybody has worked on or just the
Mm.
portion that I worked on?
So a you have a document that's the CSU Pueblo, and I may edit it to refer back to ours, the Fort Collins one. But when I say go, you just paste the things from yours into the report.
Sounds good.
Remember, this matters so little. I don't believe the program manager officer reads these. Most of my NSF program managers do read and comment. As far as I know, they never even approved our ones from last year. So I don't think they look at them. I don't think this team looks at them. Um, and we've already written a progress report. So my commitment level is low here. Oh, just gotta. Okay, Ryan, I'll be here soon. Anyone else? So I'm hopeful that when I say that like Monday morning or midday, I'll be able to say, okay, everybody go, and then we'll be able to submit if you are ready.
And then are there, sorry, I guess one last question as I'm looking through this. Um, when I go to the progress report, there's those tabs like cover, accomplishments, product. Am I pasting in all of those things eventually?
Yeah, so those should match exactly the headings, the
Okay.
bold headings that are
Okay.
in your document.
Okay.
And so whatever's under that yours you paste in.
Okay.
And ours is going to be the Fort Collins one is going to be the longest, and I say in the beginning, um, this is a collaborative project, this is most of it, then we have call outs to the other ones. And I think last year I put in each of the collaborators, this is a collaborative project, most of it is discussed in the Fort Collins report.
Okay.
Just try to make it easy for somebody who might actually read the report. Don't be afraid to shout if you have questions. So Thursday morning is when I take off. And so I will attempt to be responsive until probably late Wednesday night. And then Thursday I'll be able to get email, and then Friday just completely out.
So then tell me the well-being stuff. You want to discuss that much later, or do you want to try and discuss it before you leave?
You mean the message I sent to you earlier this
On the
week?
well, yeah, yeah,
I think I'm seeing that as a long-term
yeah.
thing.
Good.
So I know you've had a number of things to push through. And so I just wanted to raise that up the list of things that's starting to get pushed through. I do have other stuff to work on too.
Okay,
So
I'll get to it. So I'll get to it, but not like tomorrow. Yeah,
yeah, it doesn't have to be tomorrow.
yeah,
I'm at the point where I'm not taking new things before I leave because it's just getting a
yeah.
little crazy.
And
Okay.
just a background question to your question three you're about to start talking about.
Yeah.
So I just want to understand why before we get into the discussion about the content. Yeah, I thought this was very funding dependent. I'm just wondering what the scope is that you're thinking that you can actually do, or is this more prospectively if we were to get funding?
Yes, all of the above. So I think you're asking, well, why are we asking these questions if the
Yeah.
project is ending? Um, and the answer is, um, I began to find it really hard to operate in two modes. One, we want to go forward, and two, what are we doing for the rest of the project? I just got split brain. And so I split off. I've started this document that has what I think are the pieces of this project. And I'm trying to get clarity on what our goals have been. And I'll show you, it's really skeletal at this point, but I'll show you how I'm doing it. And then I will tell you why I'm doing it. Um, okay, I'm gonna share this. Hold on. No, no, stop. Why is it doing this? I have so many tabs open and it's not sharing the one I selected. Okay, is it sharing now the thing that says, where is it? The focus areas. So I was trying to break out what the elements were and why we were doing them because and as I was doing this, I thought I recognized that I wasn't really sure what the goal was. But when we were shooting for long-term funding, our goal was to integrate all these pieces so that it looked good to get long-term funding. And then when I broke them down, I was like, what is the goal of each piece? Because, so now to your question, Narsim, why are we doing this? What's the goal of the of breaking out the goals? Here I can try to blow it up. So assuming that we all still believe that these are good things to do and that they need to be integrated, but it's hard to find the funding that covers all of them. The thought is that we could cover some of them in smaller projects that get spun off. But in order to do that, we need to say, we need to figure out where to pitch it and why they would be interested in this particular goal. And so, like the engagement ecosystem, something that I want to talk out with Stacy, well, we want to maintain a network of organizations. That seemed like a good idea. What is the goal of that? Right? It seems like a good idea to have participation, to have a lot of connections. Why? Same thing with the listening, which is what I wanted to do today. So Narasimha, your question is, what are we gonna, how are we gonna do the work? I think, right? Like, let's say that, that we're really great at scoping out the goals and then how we would do them. So what if we don't have support? So the Illinois project is potentially able to support some of these. So I think they're interested in the interviews, right? But then what is the goal of doing that? If I have to give them a statement of work, is it just like, let's do interviews so we can do more interviews? I don't think that's a good sell, right? So I felt more confident in what we wanted to do with the modeling, what we wanted to do with the building characterization, and that's because I've been involved in those more closely. So I thought that trying to suss out the goals of each piece would both help us understand each other, assuming that we won't get funded together, but we're going to pursue our separate areas. We still want to know what each other is doing because we've expressed interest in drawing on that. So this is both clarity for the team going forward if it becomes, more of a dispersed team, and beginning to think about the process of future proposal development. So I want to hear from Ryan and Chris. Ellison, I want to hear from you since you have to take off. Ryan, I know you've got teaching, so maybe I'll pick Ryan and Ellison to go first. But I also want to hear what the modeling or quantitative side thought you would get from the interviews. So can we craft a statement for our goals around that listening? And we should probably call it something else. So you can see that I was pretty fuzzy in trying to describe what we were doing. Yeah, so maybe Ryan and Ellison, if you don't mind, I'll start with you. What do you think the goal of the interviews, focus groups, and so on was or has been?
Well, I feel the most confident about the was. I think the goals were to understand people's conception of well-being as it relates to their home and to understand their theory of change. I think that stayed as like a steady goal that informed the questions that were developed and the way that Chris presented, at least to the group. Chris, it'd be great to know if you have, like, if you want to add to that, but I think those were the two goals. Yeah, I don't know, Ryan or Chris, if you have something to add to that.
Are we thinking about this both forward looking and backward looking?
You mean in the past and in the future of the project?
Well, is the goal here like, I guess I didn't understand the prompt. Is it like what was our goal in the project, or is this also what would our goal with interviews be going forward be?
I'm really more interested in going forward.
Okay.
But I will take, yeah, I don't see if we didn't have a goal in the past, it's too late, right?
Yeah, I guess like for me, there are elements that because we did interviews in one place, we can't necessarily evaluate as well as we might want to evaluate. So like contractor homeowner interactions, what is the effect of that on this system? I think there's a lot of exploration to be done there. I think actually if we look at like rebates and government incentives and like interactions with institutions themselves, um, there's a lot of questions to be asked there that we didn't engage in this set of interviews that I think probably matter. But I mean, I'm a policy person, and so those are kind of policy specific
But be
objectives.
policy specific. That's why you're here.
Yeah. So those are the things I'm curious about that I
So
don't think.
can you help me capture that last thing you said? Because I don't think I got it very well. I didn't
So
write it.
how interactions with institutions and like policy instruments are affecting homeowner decision making. So I think like using the example of Illinois, I think the direction many states go is they spend money on rebates. And if you look at the data on rebates, there's not a lot of evidence that rebates actually shape behavior from like economic studies.
Okay.
It doesn't necessarily mean they don't matter for how homeowners think about the system. If it's like priming homeowners to think about certain technologies, or it's maybe like setting them to talk to certain contractors. So I think there's exploration to be done there.
Mm-hmm.
Or we need to quit spending money on rebates.
Your position will be popular, Ryan.
I'm like, oh no, are you getting all the emails about all the states that are now rolling out their home efficiency rebate programs?
It will just
Ryan,
acknowledge, yeah, the literature is not real positive on them. So I don't, yeah.
But people
Ryan,
like them. Sorry, go ahead.
um, Ryan, I'd be curious about the studies. I mean, I know of one positive study, but I haven't looked at the literature as well as much as you have. So I'm curious about, and then even the one I've seen is with regards to heat pumps in particular, but rebates can apply for so many different home energy things. But yeah, I'm curious about that. But it seems like Ryan's questions are consistent with what Ellison said in a way. Like if I understand your theory of change question, Ellison, then I would understand the question on rebates as being part of that. Like,
Yeah.
is that really affecting your decisions to change or not?
Yeah.
So those seem consistent to me.
Yeah, I would agree on some of that. That's, I think those two broad goals of the former project remain through lines into what I don't think has been answered satisfactorily. Not that we haven't made progress, but and maybe a forward facing one, Tammy, is like, I think that Chris's results really point in the direction of need to address heat stress in a way that is not talked about in a real mature way yet in the heat pump adoption literature. It keeps coming up. It seems to be what people are responding to in their experience in their home. Maybe not like that they're not responding to other issues, but that's something that came out, and it's a small sample in one place, but it's consistent with what others are observing in other places, both globally and in the US. So I think that that would be, something worth learning more about, because it would probably influence maybe some of the things, Ryan, you were mentioning. At least I see them as connected. Yeah.
And so I think I want to hear from Chris too, but I've got one response to what Ryan said, which is we've only done the interviews in one place. And so that implies to me that there's this cross-checking or going outside the population we were accessing. There's some of that component of it in the understanding. Is that true? Maybe anybody can respond to this. Like how many, wait, let me begin by saying the impression I got from you, Chris, is that you had talked to a number of people, and I didn't hear a strong motivation to talk to more people because it seemed like the themes were repeating themselves, and you were not, you had learned what you were going to learn from that group. Am I correct in that?
I'd say that's correct. Definitely in respect to HVAC systems. I think it would be interesting to look at other forms of technologies and to see if these same things matter as much or come up as frequently.
And so maybe from everybody, so let's focus around the HVAC first and then go broader later if necessary. What further work on people's conception of well-being in their homes do you think is needed to cover a broader range of respondents, or like what would you do to address that question? We only talked to one group of people. Or am I asking the wrong question?
Think for me, one way to think about talking to different people is also we've only talked to homeowners. And like one of the reasons I'm like excited about like the HPC abstract and doing that is like to me talking with also HVAC people about how they approach things like heat stress. Like, is this a selling point for you? Do you talk about this when you're planning for somebody's HVAC system? Do you consider their heating like or their cooling needs today rather or in 15 or 10 years? I think there's a lot that we can do there. And like our plan was always to do contractor interviews second.
Yep.
There's a part of me that regrets that now and wishes we'd done them first because I think, yeah, but.
So
one comment.
Go ahead.
No, you finish your thought.
It was vague.
Well, I just wanted to clarify. I think, Ellison's questions, there were two questions. I think they're very strongly overlapping, but they are distinct, which is asking about people's perceptions of well-being in the home, what it means to them, and asking them about theory of change or what they would do to change. Those are likely to be overlapping, but they're different questions. And I think that it informs your question in terms of how would I want to address this question of have we looked broadly enough? If we were thinking about the change question, then I can think of a sampling approach that would look more broadly at people who've changed their HVAC systems, at a national scale perhaps, so that we just capture a broader range of conditions and then find out more generalizable results about what drove that decision. Whereas if it's a well-being question, I don't think you have to be so strategic in sampling. You can do random sampling, but perhaps in Illinois more broadly, since this is about Illinois, it will be region dependent. It depends how much weather is a part of your life and in what way. So I do think knowing what question you want to ask of the group is the first question before you ask how do we need to address the sufficient sampling question.
Yeah, and so that's why I'm getting back up to the goal. right? There are a lot of things we could do. What do we want to do? What do we think is maybe the uh, 1, 2, or 3 next best things that we want to do? And this is partly because I'll be on the lookout for opportunities. And if I know that people are very keen to address a particular question, I will, if I see something where I think it fits, I'll try to roll it in.
Tammy, can I comment real quick because I have to go?
Yeah, please.
Kind of on that point, and I think it follows up on what you were saying, Narsim, or at least it does in my head. One thing that I don't feel there's resolution on because we weren't able to keep going with this work is there any insight from people's conception of well-being in their home that would change current decision rules that are in models? I think there's 2 things there that one is quite solvable. I don't fully understand the decision rules. And I think it's just because we didn't get to the point where we were talking about that enough that I had a good idea of what would change. That seems like something that could change just by me getting, like, teaching myself. But I think the question of whether those rules are worth changing, if there's insight enough from how people think of well-being to change them, I think would be a really interesting finding, because one of the premises of this is that we're not capturing the benefits of these change as comprehensively as we think we might. But I think through a few discussions and thinking about what we've learned from people, it's not clear that there's a better decision rule than set point. Maybe that is still the best. And I think that would be, whether or not there's a change to those decision rules, I think is a robust finding, because it's good to know more about either way, whether we change it or suggest changing it or don't. So that's something I maybe close on. Sorry, I have to go.
Thanks, Allison.
Yep, bye.
I'm going to go in a couple of minutes too, but I just wanted to follow up. I do like the way Allison has dovetailed those questions. I think that is a good way, a useful way. But it makes me think about, well, what do people mean when they say well-being? Should we only be focused on their perception of the contribution of HVAC to well-being in the home? Because what if the change in the equipment has conforms to their environmental attitudes or makes them feel more secure in the
Right.
home
Right.
more broadly? Then you're asking about broader well-being questions. So it raises the issue as to the scope of the well-being question. And the second thing I wanted to make, you asked from the perspective of a quantitative model, which direction we would want the research to go. And I obviously have a bias towards the change question because we're interested in modeling change and want to understand change better. Fine, if it's what aspect of well-being may drive your decision rules, but I'd be happy to just have a clean slate and really trying to understand people's decisions, as you know from the review, just that what is going to make you retire equipment earlier, or early. That to me is huge.
Cool. Thank you. Chris, I narrowed the scope beyond what you had said. So you had said, well, we did the HVAC, we haven't done other things. Are you interested in other things? Is this something that you believe should be pursued? Other aspects of the home?
Not necessarily. I guess what I was thinking about was just the conversation we were having about the role that heat stress plays in more specifically changes that are being made in respect to HVAC systems. And certainly I think that's probably more pronounced in a town like Pueblo, where the swamp coolers are a really normal thing. They're not, from my understanding, they're not normal everywhere. And so I would be curious to see if that plays a role, right, in locations where they're not really replacing old technologies like that. But on the other hand, if we're to proceed with the path we've been on, I think like Ryan was talking about, I think there's lots of questions we can ask contractors about their role, and the nice thing about that is that it certainly connects with what we have already completed.
Can you say more about that?
Well, just that because we've been sampling people who have primarily done work with the swamp coolers, and or I shouldn't say primarily with the swamp coolers, but primarily with the HVAC systems. I think it does make sense to, when we're interviewing contractors, to be focusing on that technology.
Right. Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and I think we haven't got there yet, so I'm not sure how to kind of expand that. So I think you're advocating. So when you said we've done HVAC only, I was thinking, oh, maybe you want to do cooking or something, but that's not what you're saying. You're just talking about maybe more things around that space conditioning
Yeah, I
system.
get that. Yeah, it was just more of a
Mhm.
curiosity about whether heat stress is the central driving force
Yeah,
everywhere.
right, right. So maybe I'll put at the top, theory of change involves well-being, including heat stress. Something like that. Does that seem accurate, that there's this well-being, and we heard very strongly heat stress that plays a role in decision making, and then bring that down to the contractors? We don't know what they consider. That I feel like I overly mashed your words, so I'm not sure I got it right.
No, you're good.
Stacy, you haven't said much, but I know you have a lot of practical experience looking at both policy instruments and decisions, of people who are engaging in those programs. In terms of what you think we need to understand, what you would be excited, interested to pursue, particularly not with data, but particularly with regard to um, contact, listening, interviews, focus groups. What are the things that you think are still open questions? What feels like next for you?
One of the, like outcomes from the listening session so far with homeowners was talking about heat stress. I would want to keep things open to also cold climates, because I think that there's also probably drivers in, you know, technology adoption in cold climates. There's just so much, yeah, like
Okay.
dogma, right? That like heat pumps can't work in the
Mhm.
cold. That really,
Mhm.
that people grab onto, and then contractors say it and repeat that, and then the
Mhm.
whole community believes it. So I think that's great there.
Mhm.
Um,
Do you think there are, okay, so first, very specific question, where do you define as cold climates? Like Illinois is not a cold climate, right? You're talking about like Minnesota.
no,
Or
we talk about like in Illinois and like Chicago, like if people are going to get a heat pump, they should try and find a cold climate heat pump for the winter.
really?
Mhm.
Is your climate zone very different from Colorado? I got to look at that. That's a side question.
Yeah, sidebar.
I thought we were about the same. I've lived in both places and I feel like it's the same except for the humidity in the summer.
So I
So
mean, so maybe there's perceptions in that as well, which are kind of interesting. Do people perceive that, for some reason, Illinois is somehow colder than Colorado, that we need different technology here? Like it's an interesting question. Total sidebar.
that would be interesting. And so that's a perception of how the technology will work for them. The specific thing you're mentioning is not about their well-being other than the confidence in the technology, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Do you think there are well-being issues that relate to maybe different kinds of weather that we have not considered? Because I guess that is one aspect of heterogeneity that we haven't strongly emphasized.
I don't know.
Okay.
I had
You
like,
don't
yeah, no,
have to
and
know.
I had a train, I had a train of thought on.
I have a
It's not,
suspicion,
anyway,
and
let me think about, yeah. Ryan, go ahead.
this is building on Stacy's, that like if we think about cold climates and extreme weather and grid reliability, that's mostly going to be like a rural area problem. But like, say what you will about gas and propane, but they're pretty reliable because gas lines are underground and your propane tanks at your house.
Mhm.
Um, and even if the power's out, I don't think people like they don't put together that their gas furnace won't work. Like I don't think people think that way. And like they're like, oh, I need to have multiple fuel sources because it's reliable. So even though their
Yeah.
furnace isn't going to work, that's not how people think.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, it's really funny. We talk about that a lot too in Illinois. Like you could get a heat pump and not have a gas backup, your gas isn't going to work anyway. And I even know that, but still have a gas backup. Um,
Because it feels weird to be without a backup, eh?
yeah, I guess so.
Um,
I have one other listening thing I want to add.
yeah.
And Chris and I had polled like people in Pueblo we thought had worked through weatherization, and we never actually interviewed those people. But I still think that is a worthwhile project, is to see what is different in this space if you have a publicly funded retrofit versus you're just using private contractors for all of the reasons we've always talked about.
Is that theory of change or is it theory of out, or is it like what the outcomes? Is it how the
I,
homeowners
I,
respond
I
or the
actually do think it's theory of change too, because public actors are limited in what they can do. And I do think one of the unique aspects of heat pumps is a heat pump allows for heating. You get cooling from it, but it's a heating technology that also provides cooling if
yeah,
you're a household that's doing weatherization because they can't install air conditioners.
weatherization can't install air conditioners. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But do you think there's more to that public versus private funding that would go elsewhere as well?
I mean, it's also going to be under contractors because specific contractors are going to work with weatherization. They have a subcontract, but to me, it's like, yeah, it kind of spills over all of these because it's like the effectiveness of a government program in some ways.
Well, that's I think one difference, and um you've been looking at training, but have you been looking at government government programs might have a particular thing that they train for, whereas your training as a private contractor may not include those pushes?
I think like that's 100% true that like the weatherization contractors have to meet greater standards. There's more rules.
there may be more rules, but I think it's just also more, or a certain body of knowledge or a way of thinking that's introduced through some of the training programs. And I know nothing about how a private contractor gets to be a private contractor. I assume there's some kind of certification or training. You must have looked into this, Ryan. Or Stacy, you must know about this.
I think it's pretty easy to become a general contractor. You just have to like fill out a form that says that you are
A general contractor and have insurance.
yeah.
Well, you have to get licensed through like the jurisdiction where you need to do work. And so sometimes those jurisdictions will all have different rules. So like in Denver, you're supposed to apprentice with somebody for a couple of years. I tried to pull all those records and I couldn't get them.
Well, somebody knows that. Probably HPC folks know that.
I
So I'd
think
like
I'm
to talk to them.
interested in like codes a little bit and how that helps. I feel like there's like information. I don't know where it's coming from. That I was talking about it with some folks the other day. Like if design it gets to, well, I don't know. This is like it's design, it's architecture, and it gets at adoption of codes and who's adopting codes and who isn't. There's like a whole body over in like elsewhere, I think. Um, from a residential perspective, like do people perceive that codes matter? Um, I'm running a program right now and we keep running into that like this idea and it's widespread that contractors will give a price that follows permits and codes and a price that does not. And they tell people like, oh, well, it's fine. It's totally fine. We did it like this in the past. There's no problem here. So it'll just cost you a lot less if I don't have to report this. So it's like super common. But then there's also like this playoff of like, well, if contractors are following and they're in a jurisdiction where they're not required, the contractor or the architect might be following codes anyway. So it sort of like raises all boats in communities that aren't necessarily, regulating or, requiring some kind of a permit approval process.
So there's like a whole.
This is like, I feel like this is like a whole totally like inquiry.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a I mean it's almost like a diffusion of practice, but the uptakers are not the consumers, they're the whole jurisdiction. Okay, Raidul and Zara, I have heard little from you, but some of this plays into the modeling, not the current modeling, but the ultimately future modeling. Is there anything that you would want to know that seems limiting as you look at homes from a sort of building characterization perception and homeowners as agents? What do you, and just hearing what's come out here, what do you see as limiting or missing knowledge that could be brought forward?
I wouldn't say missing, but what I am really interested in, like you and I have been working on the decision algorithm, and it's kind of pretty basic right now. But what I'm really interested, okay, now we have the understanding how contractors think, how the interaction with the homeowners come along the decision-making process, and what we can draw the decision-making rules from those conversation and put that into the model to see the rate of change. That's something I see as an exciting and also very fundamental in the future.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I think our decision or our choice model is pretty, it's not even basic, it's like basically guessed or made up. And that's been one of the problems all along, right?
Yeah.
Zara, do you have
Um,
any thoughts on this?
From what Raidut said, something comes to my mind that if a specific area has a limited alternative for choosing between the like heating system, what's the difference between that limited options and another area that have origins have more options to choose between? Yeah, or availability of the fuels or other things. I haven't developed like something more concrete on this, like a question on this type, but it's interesting when there is limitation of options, how it impacts the choices.
So are you talking about limitation of whether people could consider a gas furnace because of the infrastructure? Or is it
Yes,
something else?
yes, yes, that's the case.
Y-
Maybe sometimes the infrastructure rather than the costs impact the choices. They consider the accessibility more than the cost.
Well, they're maybe not different, right? Like anyone can get gas infrastructure as long as you pay somebody to run a gas line to your home, which is inexpensive in an urban area and very expensive in a rural area. That may be an extreme answer, but um, it is it is true. Chris, I don't think in your interviews you even got to like people were thinking about their infrastructure, right? They were just given the choice by the contractor, right? Like the contractor didn't talk them through all these different options. It seemed, but maybe we should put in the theory of change of contractors how they choose the options that are offered.
Yeah, that it wasn't brought up much by people in terms of in part because they were they seemed unaware of options that the contractors never brought up in the first place. And
That makes
uh,
sense.
I remember when we had work done at our house, I had asked the one of the big contractors here, Arbuck, whether um, they do many heat pumps, and they had made a comment about how they had just recently, within the past year or something, started doing those. So if that's the case, then um, no one would have, or hardly anyone would have known that that was an option beforehand. And of course, if the main contractor in town isn't qualified or certified to do it, then that would have limited options quite a bit.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we've come to through we weren't it wasn't a totally new thing, but I don't think we recognized that in it's really not the occupant that's choosing. The occupant might choose between one or two options, but those options are down selected by the contractors. And so to your point, Zara, we know that there are limitations on it that play a role in choice, but they're not actually getting to the occupant's choice. They're probably only getting as far as the contractor's choice. Okay. I will try to like make a goal here and see what folks think about it. this is something I've been wanting to do because, as I said, we're going to be able to do a little bit with the Illinois work. Probably the scope is small, so it's not a huge amount, but it just really helps me to know what people are excited about moving forward. Anyone have any last thoughts? Okay. Thank you all. We'll see you in a while.